Hello everyone, and welcome to the channel. Hillbilly Military Modeling here. And in this video we are going to continue on our current project, which is the France 3538H tank by Trumpeter in 1/35 scale. And in this video we'll be doing the painting and chipping and maybe even just a little bit of pigments. So let's go ahead and get started on this. First thing we need to do is get the model ready for painting. And I'm using the cheap dollar store car wash sponge. And what I need to do is I need to block off where our turret mounts onto the hull, because we painted the interior in the previous video during assembly. So we're going to want to protect that. I'm just going to stuff it inside the hole here. Not too worried about breaking anything off on the interior because there's not that much in the way of parts inside there. But you would want to be careful if you had a lot of detail inside the interior. And I'm just using the tweezers to pull it up nice and snug so we don't have any gaps. Next, we need to protect the paint on the interior of our turret. So I'm going to place some masking tape right around the inside of the turret ring. And the turret is small, so it's kind of difficult to get in there and get the masking tape where I want it. But we do get it. Now we're going to take some paper towel and we're just going to carefully stuff it inside the turret, and that'll help protect the inside of the turret from any overspray. Now when we paint the turret, we're not going to be painting directly into the bottom of the turret, just the bottom edge of the turret. So this paper towel should be more than enough to protect it from a little bit of mist or overspray. And you're going to want to be careful that you don't break anything off while you're doing this. About the only thing we got inside this turret is the main armament. Now I've decided to paint these shackles for our tank on the sprue, but what I've done is I've removed the sprue gates right on the very edge. That way we only have one sprue gate holding it into place and only one little spot to touch up when we cut it free. And here I'm using the low-tack painter's mask. And I'm going to fold the edges of that over to keep it from coiling up on me. And I like using this tape for painting purposes because it doesn't leave a residue on my parts, but it does hold them firmly in place, and that's important with little bitty parts so that you don't blow them away with the air gun. And so we'll just stick our pioneering tools and our exhaust guard and those little parts like that we're going to paint separately onto the tape. Now I will go ahead and prepare a second piece of tape so that when I get ready to paint the other side of the tools, I'll have something to put the parts on. Now some parts lend themselves to easy use of alligator clips, and I like to use those whenever I can. And I've also glued the bipod to the machine gun, and I've left it attached to the sprue at the buttstock. So after painting and everything, we only have that one little spot to touch up. I've been using an old Master airbrush. It's probably about $22 for it for like the past year. And it came with my air compressor. It was part of a kit. So finally I've decided to break down and get a new airbrush. So here I've got the Iwata Neo. And let me tell you, it's just a world of difference between those two airbrushes. Now the Iwata sells for $60 and it is worth every penny. I should have bought one a long time ago. So, okay, on with the video. Now we're going to prime the entire vehicle using this Vallejo acrylic black, and that'll give us an opportunity to take a good look at the model and make sure that everything is sanded nice and smooth. Now remember, in the previous video I did quite a bit of body work on this thing, so we want to check all that and make sure that it's nice and smooth, and we can correct it now before we get into painting in all of our colors. Now with that done, I need to go ahead and mix up our base color, which I'm using here is Vallejo Acrylics. It's 80% IDF Israeli Sand Gray and 20% German Dark Yellow. And it's pretty close to the color of what the plastic is that Trumpeter has provided the model in. Oftentimes on these little bitty tanks, the French didn't bother to paint the running gear on them. So I have masked off the running gear, and I've also attached the heat shield that goes on the exhaust with a little bit of blue tack, so we can paint the camouflage pattern over top of it. And we've installed the turret as well, so we can get our pattern matched to the hull. Now the first color that we're going to put over our base color is going to be a French green, and I make that up with 50% parched grass and 50% Russian green. So for our last color for our camo, we need a medium brown, which I don't have other than this craft paint. This is Anita's all-purpose acrylic. So what I do is I take and I mix it up with plenty of acrylic thinner and make it a good consistency to spray. Now don't hate on me about using craft paints, but and it's fine because good quality craft paints like this one, this one's made by Rust-Oleum, so it's good pigments, and it's nice and smooth. I didn't even have to strain it, so that's what I use for the next color. And since we're on a roll with craft paints, I don't really have the right shade of gray that I want to use for our chipping color, so we're going to make our chipping color out of black and this medium gray that I have here. It's in craft paint, and I also thin it with flow medium. You're going to have to thin it quite a bit because craft paints are really thick. And so the scheme that we're going for here with our chipping is we're doing really, really light, real fine chipping. And since we spent so much time on our paint scheme here, we don't really want to beat it up too bad. But it is a real small tank also, so large chips would look really out of place on it. So we're just kind of keep it scaled down. And I think it looks pretty good like that. So we're going to stick with that. And one of the areas I think that a lot of us tend to overlook is the undercarriage, the bottom of the vehicle. And on this one, we got some relief detail, which lends itself to chipping. So what I've done here is I've taken the chipping color and I've come in and using the sponge I streaked it and pulled it back. on areas where you know it's most likely to touch the ground, and up next to higher relief or lower relief in this case. Not so much to give us a worn look, because the bottom of this vehicle is going to get all the paint's going to get scraped off the bottom of it. So we've laid down the first foundation here for that with this chipping color. Next up, we're going to use the same chipping color, which is a real dark gray, and we're going to paint all the metal parts on our tools with it. Now, like you guys, I'm a student of YouTube as well. But I've seen other modelers use a dark gray, for the metal parts on the tools. And I think it has a lot of merit. So on this little French tank, that's what we're going to do. We're going to use this real dark gray instead of black, because black can be really stark. And we'll see how this turns out for us. I think it's going to look pretty good. So next we're going to use Model Masters Acrylic Wood, and we're going to use that on all the wooden parts of our tools. And that's going to give us a good base for the next step in the process of trying to make our handles look like wood. Also, our tools have these tool clamps on them, and I will match that up to the correct color that's on the upper hull from our camouflage before I install these. So after our wood color dries, I come back over them with this Tamiya panel liner brown to simulate the wood. Here I use Tester's enamel flat steel to put in the wear where the paint and everything would be scruffed off of the tools, and I also use it on the bottom of the hull to show the representation of bare metal. Now we're going to turn our attention to our running gear. So I'm going to use this Tamiya metallic gray XF56, and we're going to paint up our sprockets where it's going to make contact with the tracks, and also our road wheels and our idlers. Now the road wheels and idlers on this vehicle are all steel, so there's no rubber there to worry about. Now we're going to work on the exhaust. I'm going to use this Vallejo pigment Old Rust. And we're just going to come in using water as a carrier, and that works pretty good over acrylics. Now you can see that I've removed the heat shield or the exhaust shield or exhaust guard. Which is it? Well, you know what I'm talking about. But now, all of our straps, I'm leaving those in the base color. Now, most of this you're not going to be able to see once we get the exhaust shield. Okay, we're going to call it an exhaust shield once we mount that. So, now we will be clear coating over top of this to fix those pigments in place so that they won't rub off on us. So here I'm attempting to use the same pigments on the over top of this enamel paint, and really if you stop and think about it, using water as a binder over an enamel paint it's pretty stupid, really, because it's just going to pull up and draw back together, as you can see it doing here. I am pretty persistent in doing this, though. So, but I do get it to stick. I quit using the water, and then I come back in and dry brush it on, which is what I should have done to begin with. So anyway, the pigments that I'm using is the Old Rust and the Natural Iron Oxide on the bottom of the hull here. So miraculously, we actually managed to get something to look like rusted over metal. So it doesn't look too bad, but it is just a little bit shiny. So I think I'm going to need to cut that down just a little bit. So I do come back in with the Vallejo Burnt Umber and just dust over it, and that gives us the look we're looking for. So now what we're going to do is seal all those pigments in, and we're going to get ready to put our decals on. And I'm going to use this Pledge Revive It to do that. Now the beauty of using this Pledge Revive It is that you don't have to thin it. It's water thin. Straight into the airbrush and straight onto the model in real thin coats, and you're ready to go. Just make sure that you let it dry thorough. And after everything has dried, we go ahead and put on our decals. And I did use microsaw to help with 2 of the decals, but they settled really nice, so I don't have any complaints there. And once all of our decals have dried thoroughly, I go back in and I reseal the decals with the Pledge Revive It. And so I think that this right here is a good place for us to stop for this video. The next video coming up, we will finish our weathering process and do the final reveal on this little French tank. And as always, I'd like to thank my subscribers and all of you guys that have tuned in to look at this video. If you're new to the channel and you like what you see, go ahead and subscribe and hit that like button. I'd appreciate that. That kind of helps us out with the YouTube algorithm. So until next video, you guys stay safe, and thanks for watching.